Good morning, everyone. Good morning from Democritus. This is an unusual situation. We are inside the room of the Scanning Electron Microscope, and I'm going to show you something quite interesting today. You've all heard of forensic science and investigations of a criminal situation. So today we're going to show you a real situation, how we forensic scientists actually analyze the minute findings. Minute findings. So the forensic scientists look for absolute small, tiny particles, tiny evidence, and then they can look at it, you can analyze it in many different ways. But one of the most important tools that we have is the electron microscope. Now, the electron microscope is like a microscope. It gives us a picture, but it doesn't work with light, but it works with electrons. Electrons have got a very, very small wavelength. They are tiny particles, and their wavelength that they correspond to is tiny. So with the result that we have a very, very high resolution. So we can actually see, first of all, we can see a very high resolution, and secondly, depth of field. We can see almost three-dimensional pictures. So a forensic scientist will go around the criminal place where the crime took place, and they start collecting tiny evidence like hairs, tiny pieces of blood, for example, pieces of soil or material from the ground, whatever they can find. And then one of the first things they do is that they bring it to the electron microscope, which is this. This is a chamber which has been evacuated because electrons are so small and so sensitive that they must be protected from hitting the atoms and the molecules in the air. With the result that the materials over here, I've got about 4 specimens in here, and I will show you interesting how they look in the electron microscope. So with the result that when we are playing with the electron microscope, we can see tiny details, but more importantly, we can analyze what we see. We actually can analyze the elements that they contain, we can analyze if they're oxidized, or if they're metals, if they are organic materials. We can analyze lots of things. So this is one of our right-hand tools, let's say. It's one of a very important tool. So I've already put some specimens in. So let's look now what we can see in the electron microscope. Let's have a look one at a time. The first things that we have here, the first evidence is some hair. We don't know if it's human hair, and we don't know if it's different types of hair. Now, the background is only the material, the substrate. It's a sticky substrate, so don't ignore this. So just have a look only at the hair. This is actually a human hair, and you can see the human hair, if you go at high enough magnification, it has particular striations. You can see that this human hair consists of scales on top of one another. This is a hair, it's a double hair, which is very interesting. Nearly always a double hair like this, in other words, 2 or 3 hairs stuck together, usually comes from a beard. And this happens from my own beard, actually. So this is a very good piece of evidence. There is some rubbish on it, some things that were stuck on it, probably skin. So we can analyze this skin as well. Next to it, there's another hair, which looks similar. Let me have a look. This may be human hair. Let's focus it a little bit. The magnification is 1500. It's not easy to focus, but it looks human. Let's see another hair. And it's much thinner hair, and I have a feeling that this is a woman's hair. If we go to the right, over here, there's another one. Let's see what we can see on this one. This one is interesting. This one has some evidence. The picture is not very clear today. It looks similar to a human hair, but this evidence over here, let's say, little pimples on the hair indicate that this is an animal. These are small items that you need to know as a forensic scientist. So this is probably an animal hair, and most probably it's one of the cats at home. Because I took some hairs from my cats. All right. So let's see if there's any other hairs that we can investigate. This is another human hair. Another thing about cat hair is extremely straight. So this is curved. So this is probably human hair, and this one is probably human. Let's see. No, this is a cat hair on the left or the right there. And anything else? No, we don't have anything else. So this is probably human. It's thin. It's a regular shape. And this is a cat hair over here. This one is definitely a cat hair. It's straighter. It has those pimples on it, and the striations, the cells are different. So this is now one part of investigation of hair. So we can find out if any animals were nearby or anything like that. Now let's look at something else now. A second piece of evidence that we collected was a piece of glass, and on the piece of glass there was a tiny amount of a material. Oh, it's a pity that the picture is not very good. Let's see what we can do about it. Ah, there. There's a tiny amount of material that looked very similar to blood. And in fact, if we do the investigation and we do the test, then you can see that these things are the red blood corpuscles. And the shape of the blood corpuscles can actually give us information, and when we analyze them, it can give us information whether it's an animal or a human blood or things like that. This was on a piece of glass, and so it could have been a piece of glass that broke during a fight or during somebody breaking in and things like that. So there's the glass over here. On the glass, there's also particles. Let's see if we can identify any of these particles. There is a tiny grain. Let's focus it a little bit. Unfortunately, it's not focusing very well. Okay, I haven't prepared the specimens very well, but it doesn't matter. You can get some information, and you can analyze a lot of these particles over here, and whatever they're called, they are necessary. So we can find out if this blood is human or it's not human. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time today. But if you're interested in this type of thing, you can write to me, and I'll tell you information on how you do that. The number 3 was an interesting one. It was actually material that could have been collected from a shoe. There's an interesting part here. This is over here. This is a really interesting thing. So what is this? Have you ever seen anything like that? It's actually pollen. And it's pollen from a particular type of flower. Look at that over here. It's a particular type of flower. So you can actually identify what flower was nearby when somebody was walking along or moving along, because this could have been taken from a shoe. And you can see the pollen is actually spherical with some spikes on it, and most pollen actually have a different shape according to the flower they come from. So this is again a very interesting type of forensic investigation, because it tells you a lot of where the person has been and things like that. Together with the pollen, we see some tiny particles of wood, and again, this can be analyzed, and we can find out what kind of wood this is from, and things like that. Finally, and I'll show you now a fourth one, is some evidence of soil. Now this is particles that could have come from a shoe, or could have come from the fingernails or things like that. Now together with this wood, there's a lot of wood particles here. Let's say this one. These are wood particles. You can see the fibers of the wood, and you can see the bark and things like that. But together with the particles of the wood, there's also tiny pieces of rock and soil. This is soil that contains some fibers. And we can analyze the soil because it's inorganic, and we have other programs here, and we can analyze it. Let's see now. Let me adjust it a little bit. And let's put the analysis, because what we can do is that we can check the X-rays that come from the surface of the material. Let's see if we can improve it. It's getting, don't worry about the picture. You can look on the left here. Now this one, this is it says cobalt here, and there's carbon and oxygen. That means it's an organic material. So the cobalt is probably contamination. So let's look at something a little bit more exciting. This is probably just an organic material. Let's find, oh, there's a piece of stone. And let's see if we can look at that stone a little bit better. We can clear this, connect. This is getting a little bit interesting. This is a piece of stone, or again soil, but again it's organic, so it's not a stone that I expected. Let's have a look. Sometimes in the microscope you have to do a lot of searching around to find evidence, especially evidence that you can use. And let's see if there's any obvious stone. This is all organic. This one is wood. It's obviously wood. Let's see this one. That could be a stone. Well, let's have a look. This one, no. It's quite a small piece of organic mixed with inorganic materials. It's interesting that it keeps on giving cobalt, which means that there is some cobalt in the soil that I took it out from. How about this one? This one looks like it's a mixture of stone together with some organics. Let's clear this and let it collect. There's something more coming up here. You can see the pics that you see over here are actually the X-rays that are being collected from the surface of the material. Again, it looks like it's some sort of organic. There's carbon, there's oxygen. This cobalt thing sticks there, which is very interesting. And there's something more coming up, and it looks like there's something more, probably silicon and things like that. It hasn't recognized it yet. We need to leave it for a long time. So you can see that with electron microscope, and in addition, together with electron microscope, together with the analyzer, we can actually get a lot of information. We can get information from the hairs, we can get information from the group that's around there, from the pollen, from the blood that we find, and lots of different things. Unfortunately, we don't have much time anymore, so I hope you enjoyed it, and you can actually see now, compare real forensic science with the forensic science they show in Hollywood in the films. So if you want any more information, you're welcome to contact me, and we can talk more about this. Until next time, have a nice day and enjoy your school.